Continues tomorrow with Game 2. Rockets Warriors. It all starts with Countdown, 8 Eastern on ESPN. Speaking of, the league MVP had a 34-point, 5-assist, 6-rebound performance in Golden State's win over the Rockets. The Warriors went small with just one of Draymond Green, Andrew Bogut, Festivus Ezeli, or David Lee on the floor. Harrison Barnes also rotated in and out, but according to Elias with the Smalls, the Warriors were able to score 59 of their 110 points. The Warriors took the lead in the second quarter, never looked back. It was a wrap. So in your opinion, Skip Bayless, what was the difference?
Let Mr. Smith.
You want him to go?
Sure. Absolutely.
Right. Stephen A.
He says.
Stephen A. in Philly, what was the difference?
Well, I think the difference outside of Steph Curry's greatness was the fact that the supporting cast showed up to help him more so than Houston's supporting cast showed up to help James Harden. James Harden had nearly a triple-double with 28, 11, and 9. Steph Curry obviously hit 6 3-pointers. He scored 34 points. He was electric at times. At times, James Harden was electric himself and looked absolutely unstoppable, particularly in the second half. But ultimately, what it comes down to is that Klay Thompson showed up. He hit 6 of 18 shots. That's not great, but he still dropped in 15 points. Draymond Green was relatively impressive with a double-double, plus they were a plus 12 with him on the basketball court. And I look at Sean Livingston's 18 points off the bench for Golden State as pivotal in this series, because you got to remember, he's a backup. He's slim and slender, but Sean Livingston would have been a star in this league had he not had injuries to his knees. But he showed up. He's a backup. He causes matchup nightmares for a lot of the opposition, Skip, because he's a legit 6'7", 6 feet 8. So because of that, that's a bit problematic. Whereas in the case of Houston, I told you the X factor in this series was going to be Dwight Howard. Now, he banged knees. I think it was with Smith or somebody in the first quarter.
Yep.
As a result, he was never himself. But he finished with just 7 points. Even though he had 13 rebounds, he finished with just 7 points. They were a minus with him on the court, and that's not going to fly. What they were, -4 with him on the court. If the Houston Rockets don't have Dwight Howard being dominant in this series, and right now he's scheduled to have an MRI today so we can find out the status of his knee. If you don't have Dwight Howard not just playing, but being dominant, you have no chance to win this series. And last night, Dwight Howard obviously was not that. And even though it was a highly competitive matchup, nip and tuck back and forth, you saw what the end result was. They had a 16-point lead, and Golden State erased it within minutes in the second quarter and ultimately ended up holding on for the victory. You need Dwight Howard to step up and be that franchise $88 million man caliber player that he's supposed to be. Otherwise, you Houston, you don't have a shot.
Let me quickly echo your Sean Livingston point. It did my heart good to watch this young man finally have his moment in the sun, because, as you remember, he was a high pick for the Clippers, looked like he was going to be a star in this league, and tore up his knee about as badly as you can tear it up. So God bless him. And let me say, because I predicted a sweep in this series, I congratulate the Rockets on how they battled last night. They would not go away. I congratulate them on just hanging tough. In fact, for a while, it looked like they're going to blow the Warriors off their home court. So, way to go, Rockets. Now, to my biggest takeaway last night, the biggest reason Golden State won Game 1, for me, Stephen A., and feel free to disagree on this. Maybe I'm just too far out on the limb, but this is how I saw it. You know how big a fan I am of Steph Curry. I think he proved over the last 5.5 minutes of that game his will is stronger than James Harden's will. I think he has, Steph Curry, a little bigger clutch gene, if you will, than James Harden. And I just look at the play-by-play, Stephen A. 5:28 left. That game was 97-all. Tie game with 5.5 minutes to go. And down the stretch, James Harden committed 3 straight turnovers and missed a 3-pointer. Scored no points in the last 5.5 minutes with 3 turnovers. Meanwhile, Steph had 2 layups on slick little, there was one, the inbounds play and another back cut. He made a 3 off balance while getting fouled that was not called, that had a degree of difficulty to me of about a 10. He stole the ball from James Harden, and in the end, James Harden had to foul him with 11.8 seconds left, and Steph Curry had to step to that free throw line, having shot and missed only 1 free throw in this game. You don't think those were 2 huge clinching free throws that he shot? And obviously, as usual, he swished both of those and gave them their final margin. So to me, Steph Curry took over the game late, as James Harden was not capable of taking over the game. James had 4 turnovers in the fourth quarter, and yet, to me, and I tweeted about this, there was a minute in that game, midway fourth quarter, I thought James Harden was going to win it by himself. But when it came push to shove time, Steph took the game over. He is the MVP, and he was again last night. Your thought?
Well, he was again last night. I'm not going to completely piggyback on what you're saying simply because let's see Steph Curry do that in Houston, and let's see James Harden turn over the ball in Houston. I mean, playing at the Oracle, man, Skip, I'm telling you something special, man. It's the best home crowd in the NBA right now. It is something special to behold, being there and watching this crowd go berserk the way that they do. Please don't doubt that. And so being in those kind of hostile confines, you've got to be an elite-level player to really withstand that kind of onslaught from that home crowd in Oakland when it's aimed against you. So let's see what Steph Curry does in Houston. Let's see what James Harden goes back and does when he's Houston. What I will say to you is that I can't definitively poo-poo what you're saying because you know how I feel about James Harden and what he did in the finals.
Yep.
And so now you got this big moment again. This is when we need to see James Harden be James Harden.
You do.
We know he's a star, but this is when we need to see it. Having said all of that, again, Steph Curry is special, and we know what he brings to the table, but Harrison Barnes showed up. Sean Livingston showed up. Even though Klay Thompson had a tough shooting night, he still whispered he did. Well, I would say he didn't show up.
Well, I mean,
he hit some shots.
1 of 7 from 3, so that's not what he usually does.
Yeah, 1 of 7 from 3, but a couple of pump fakes going into the lane, mid-range, pull-up J. He had it going a little bit there, so I'll give him credit for that because he established enough of himself as being enough of a threat. But what do you have to say for Houston? There are other guys that have got to show up and help James Harden. James Harden is not going to beat the Golden State Warriors by himself. You need, again, Corey Brewer, Josh Smith, and those guys. You know, they all played hard last night.
They did.
But you need Dwight Howard to win this series.
Okay.
You need your Dwight Howard to win this series.
But remember, in the first half, Dwight Howard, as they fed the post maybe to a fault, had 5 turnovers. So I'm not sure they missed him that much on and off in the second half. I don't know.
I'm not saying they missed him. I'm saying they will miss him because they're not winning this series unless he plays well. I'm saying even when he was on the court, the bottom line is it's not enough to beat it. You got to produce. You have to play like an $88 million man in order for Houston to have a chance of winning this series. If Dwight Howard doesn't do that, you're not winning this series. You're not winning.
How often have you seen him play like an $88 million man?
Well, Skip, I will say this to you, Skip. I had no problem with the way he played in the Portland series last year when they lost in the first round. And I have no problem with how I saw him play thus far in the playoffs. Even though at some point he was getting outplayed by DeAndre Jordan, it was because of those alley-oops Chris Paul was throwing to him, how effective DeAndre Jordan was. Plus, DeAndre Jordan has a legitimate 3-inch height advantage over him. I'm just looking at Dwight Howard. You've got to produce. You're going up against Andrew Bogut. I mean, come on. I mean, if you can't step up and get it done, what do I need to pay this money to you for?
Well,
I mean, assuming he's healthy. If he's not healthy, that's different. But Dwight Howard is too gifted. You are supposed to abuse anybody on Golden State's front line. You're supposed to abuse them.
Yeah, and to your usual point, Bogut was bogus to start that game. He got off to a rocky start and wound up mostly on the bench because they went small as Houston was going small also.
Well, I'm glad you said that because far be it, I don't want to be called a wonker.
You don't want to be a wonker anymore. Yeah. Okay. Game 2 tomorrow night.
So
Oracle,
you said that,
9 Eastern on ESPN.